I always thought I would remember our third wedding anniversary as the day my husband finally surprised me with something thoughtful. Instead, I remember it as the day I learned my marriage had been a lie since before it even began. But before I tell you about that day, I need you to understand who I was before it happened, because the woman who sat frozen behind a steering wheel outside a stranger's house was not the same woman who walked into that marriage 3 years earlier. And understanding the distance between those two versions of me is, I think, the whole point of this story. My name is Elena. I was 34 when I met Marcus, at a point in my life where I had mostly made peace with the idea that I might not get the marriage and family version of adulthood that everyone around me seemed to be collecting. I had a career I was proud of. 6 years as a paralegal specializing in family law. Most of it spent helping other women untangle exactly the kind of situation I would eventually find myself in. Though of course I didn't know that yet. I had a house of my own, purchased 2 years earlier with an inheritance from my grandmother. A small but sturdy 2-bedroom with a garden she would have approved of. I had a life that worked, even if it wasn't the life I'd once imagined for myself. Marcus and I met at a dinner party thrown by a mutual friend, the kind of low-stakes gathering where nobody expects to meet anyone significant. He was funny in a dry, understated way. He asked good questions and actually listened to the answers, which I had learned by then was rarer than it should be. He worked in logistics, regional distribution, he called it, which meant he traveled often, sometimes for a week at a stretch, sometimes for 10 days. When he mentioned this early on, almost apologetically, as though warning me it might be a deal breaker, I remember telling him it sounded like a relief, honestly. I liked my space. I liked not having someone underfoot every evening. It seemed, at the time, like an unusually good fit. We dated for 11 months before he proposed, which felt fast to some of my friends, but right to me. I want to be honest about the version of him I fell in love with, because I think it matters for understanding how thoroughly he was able to deceive me. Marcus was attentive in a way that made me feel chosen. He remembered that I took my coffee with oat milk, never dairy. He remembered the name of the dog I'd had growing up, a scruffy terrier named Biscuit, and would ask about her memory on the anniversary of her death, without me ever mentioning the date to him twice. He sent flowers on the day I passed my paralegal certification exam, 4 years before we'd even met, because I'd mentioned it once in passing, and he'd apparently filed it away. Looking back now, with everything I understand today, I see that same trait completely differently. A man who remembers that much detail about you is not necessarily a man who is fully present with you. Sometimes he is a man who has simply gotten very good at managing more than one life, and the details are how he keeps the accounts straight in his head. The wedding was small, 60 guests, a garden venue, nothing extravagant. I remember standing at the altar thinking that I had gotten lucky in a way I hadn't expected to, that after years of being the woman who helped other people navigate the wreckage of failed relationships, I had somehow found my way into a good one. My sister Priya cried through the whole ceremony. My mother, who had never fully trusted anyone I dated before Marcus, hugged him afterward and told him, only half joking, that if he ever hurt me, she would find him. For the first year of marriage, nothing seemed different from dating, except now his trips felt slightly longer and slightly more frequent. He called every night before bed, without fail, which I took as devotion. He always brought back small gifts, a scarf from wherever he'd been, local honey, once a hand-carved wooden bird, he said, reminded him of me, though he never explained why. I never once thought to question the travel itself. Why would I? I trusted him completely. And trust, I've learned, is not a flaw. It's simply a bet you make with incomplete information. And I was betting on the information he gave me. There were small things, in retrospect, that I now understand were warning signs I simply didn't have the framework to read at the time. He was cagey about the specific cities on his route, always vague. Up north, the regional loop. Never a hotel name I could look up. Never a colleague's name I could cross-reference with certainty. When I offered, twice, to fly up and meet him for a weekend during one of his longer trips, he found reasons it wouldn't work. Bad timing with client meetings, a hotel too far from anything worth seeing, a schedule too unpredictable to plan around. I remember feeling mildly disappointed both times, but never suspicious. That's the thing about a well-maintained lie. It doesn't announce itself. It simply removes one small excuse at a time, every opportunity you might have had to accidentally discover it. For our 3rd anniversary, I decided to break from tradition. In our first 2 years, we'd done something quiet and predictable. A nice dinner, once a short weekend trip to the coast. This year, I wanted to surprise him. Through a scheduling coincidence, I learned from a colleague of his, a woman named Rosa who I'd met once at a company holiday party, that Marcus had an unusual stretch of downtime coming up on what he called his regional route, a rare Friday with no client meetings. I decided, with an excitement I hadn't felt in years, that I would drive up early, book a room somewhere near where he'd be staying, and surprise him a full day before he expected to see me. I told only my sister. Priya helped me plan the logistics and made me promise to text her updates along the drive, half joking that if I didn't check in by a certain hour, she'd assume I'd been abducted by a rest stop serial killer, which was the kind of thing we joked about because neither of us had any real reason to be afraid. I packed an overnight bag. I bought a bottle of the same wine we'd had at our wedding, wrapped carefully in a towel so it wouldn't break on the drive. I remember feeling, as I pulled out of the driveway that morning, unusually light. Lucky, even. I thought about how some of my friends complained constantly about husbands who worked too much or traveled too often, and I felt almost smug that mine, despite all his travel, always came home to me fully present, fully mine. The 4-hour drive passed easily. I stopped once for coffee, texted Priya a photo of the gas station cat that had wandered up to my car, felt the particular pleasant nervousness of planning a good surprise for someone you love. When the GPS finally guided me off the highway, I expected to end up somewhere near a hotel district, the kind of place with a Marriott and a strip of chain restaurants that I associated with business travel. Instead, it took me into a quiet residential neighborhood. Modest houses, well-kept lawns, the kind of street where you could tell people had lived for years, maybe raised kids there. I assumed, immediately, that Rosa had given me the wrong information, or that I had mistyped an address somewhere along the way. I parked outside a modest 2-story house with pale blue siding and a small garden out front, deciding whether to call Marcus directly and admit that my surprise had already gone sideways, or to call Rosa back and double-check the details. I sat there for maybe 90 seconds, phone in my hand, scrolling to find Rosa's number. Then the front door of the house opened. Marcus stepped out onto the porch. He was wearing a soft gray shirt I didn't recognize. Not from our closet, not something I had packed for any trip, the kind of shirt that lives permanently in a house you don't know exists. And behind him, framed in the doorway, was a woman I had never seen before in my life, dark hair pulled back, a toddler balanced easily on her hip in the practiced way of someone who has carried that particular child 1,000 times. A second child, older, maybe 4, a boy, ran past both of them across the small front lawn, laughing about something I couldn't hear from inside my car, chasing a soccer ball toward a car parked in the driveway. I did not get out of my car. I do not know, even now, whether it was shock or some deeper animal instinct toward self-preservation that kept me frozen behind the wheel, hands still on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, engine still running. I watched my husband, 3 years married, the man who remembered the name of my childhood dog, lean down and kiss this woman on the cheek with an easy, practiced familiarity, the kind of gesture you don't perform for someone new. I watched him ruffle the older boy's hair. I watched him lift the soccer bag from just inside the door and load it into the trunk of the second car with the unhurried rhythm of a man who had done this exact sequence of movements hundreds of times before. On hundreds of ordinary Friday mornings I had never known existed. I sat in that car for 11 minutes. I know the exact number because I glanced at the clock the moment I first saw him step out onto the porch, and I glanced again, almost without meaning to, when I finally found the strength to put the car in reverse and pull away without being seen. 11 minutes to watch an entire domestic scene unfold in front of me with the casual ease of routine. 11 minutes to begin, almost against my will, doing math I did not want to do. If that older boy looked to be about 4 years old and Marcus and I had been married for 3 years, then whoever that woman was, she had been part of his life since before our wedding, possibly since before we'd even met. I did not confront him that day. I know there's a version of this story where the audience expects the wronged wife to storm out of the car, march up to that porch, and demand answers on the front lawn in front of the children. That is not what happened, and I want to be honest about that, because I think it matters. What happened is that I drove 2 miles to the nearest gas station, pulled into a parking spot at the far edge of the lot, away from the pumps, and called my sister with hands that had finally begun shaking. I told Priya everything: the house, the shirt, the woman, the 2 children, the 11 minutes, in a voice so eerily calm it seemed to frighten her more than if I had been sobbing. She didn't tell me what to do. She has never been the type to hand out instructions in a crisis. She simply said, "Don't go back there. Come home if you want, or stay if you need to think. But don't go back there yet." I did not go home that night. Instead, I checked into the hotel I had originally booked for our anniversary surprise, sat down on the edge of an unfamiliar bed, still wearing my coat, and began, very quietly and very methodically, to build a case. This is the part of the story where I need to explain something about myself that Marcus never seemed to fully understand, or perhaps chose never to think too carefully about. For 6 years before I met him, I worked as a paralegal specializing in family law. Most of that time spent helping other women untangle exactly this kind of deception. Hidden assets, secret households, men who maintained parallel lives with the confidence of people who never truly expected to get caught. I had read hundreds of pages of testimony describing exactly this scenario. I had helped draft the discovery requests that exposed exactly this kind of double life, over and over, in other people's marriages. I knew, better than almost anyone, the precise mistakes these men tended to make. And now, sitting in that hotel room, I understood with a strange, cold clarity that I was finally going to use everything I had learned for myself. I did not cry that night, though I expected myself to. Instead, I opened my laptop and began pulling together every piece of financial information I could access. 3 years of joint bank statements, credit card records, the mileage logs from the car we shared, which was registered under both our names. I cross-referenced the dates of his regional route trips against hotel charges on our joint accounts, and noticed almost immediately what should have alarmed me years earlier. The charges were inconsistent, sometimes missing entirely. For trips he'd claimed lasted a week or more. If he wasn't paying for a hotel every single trip, where exactly had he been staying? The answer, obviously, was sitting behind that pale blue front door with the small garden. Over the following month, I made a deliberate choice not to confront Marcus. I let him believe our anniversary surprise had simply fallen through due to a scheduling conflict at my own job, and he seemed almost relieved rather than suspicious when I mentioned it casually over dinner one evening, which told me everything I needed to know about how little he thought I paid attention to the small inconsistencies in his life. Meanwhile, I hired a private investigator, a former colleague of an attorney I'd worked under years earlier, a woman named Carol, who specialized in exactly this kind of quiet, careful documentation. Within 2 weeks, Carol had assembled a full picture, more complete and more damning than I had braced myself for. Marcus had met this woman. Her name, I would learn, was Danielle. 8 months before he ever met me at that dinner party. Their first child, the older boy I'd seen running across the lawn, had been born 14 months into what I had believed, at the time, was our exclusive, committed relationship. Their second child, the toddler on Danielle's hip, had been born just over a year into our marriage. In the most literal sense possible, Marcus had spent 3 years building 2 families in parallel, dividing his time, his income, and, I discovered with a jolt of genuine disbelief, a slightly altered version of his own legal name, using a different middle initial with Danielle's household, just different enough that a casual record search wouldn't easily connect the 2 households, though not different enough to survive the kind of scrutiny Carol was trained to apply. I also discovered something during that month that Marcus had clearly never anticipated mattering. 3 years earlier, when we combined our finances after the wedding, I had insisted, gently but firmly, against his mild and, I now understood, deeply motivated objection. On keeping the house we lived in solely in my own name, since I had purchased it outright 2 years before we met, using the inheritance from my grandmother. At the time, he had agreed easily, framing the whole conversation as a minor formality, the kind of thing that probably wouldn't matter much either way. I understand now that he likely assumed it made little practical difference to his long-term plans. It made all the difference in the world. When I finally confronted him, I did not do it the way I imagine he might have pictured, in whatever quiet corner of his mind, occasionally worried about being caught. I did not scream. I did not throw anything, though there were nights during that month when I fantasized, in detail, about exactly what I might throw, and how satisfying it might feel. Instead, on a Tuesday evening in late October, I invited him to sit down at our kitchen table, the same table where we had eaten hundreds of quiet, ordinary dinners together over 3 years. And I placed a manila folder in front of him, unopened. "Sit down," I said. "We need to talk about Danielle." I watched the color drain from his face in real time, watched his hand freeze halfway to the folder before pulling back, as though touching it might make the situation more real than it already was. "I know about the house on Larkspur Street," I continued, my voice level in a way that surprised even me. "I know about your sons, Eli and Marcus Jr., which, by the way, is a detail I find almost impressive in its audacity. I know you've been dividing your paycheck between 2 households for at least 3 years, and I know you used our joint account to pay for Eli's swim lessons in March, and a copay at a pediatric dentist in June. He didn't deny it. I think, looking at that folder, some part of him understood immediately that denial would be not only pointless, but almost insulting, given the specificity of what I'd already laid out. Instead, he did what men like him tend to do once they've been caught. He tried to explain, as though an explanation could function as an apology. He said it wasn't what I thought. He said he had been meaning to figure it out. He said, with what I can only describe as genuine, misplaced sincerity, that he loved me too. As though that detail was supposed to soften anything. As though loving 2 people simultaneously while lying to both of them was some kind of romantic complexity rather than simple, sustained deceit. You don't get to love 2 people the way you loved us, I told him, and I remember the words coming out steadier than I felt. You get to lie to 2 people. That's the only thing you actually did. I told him he had 30 days to move out of the house, a house that, legally, had never belonged to him in the first place, a detail he seemed to only fully register in that moment, watching whatever remaining leverage he thought he had evaporate in real time. I told him I would be filing for divorce on grounds of infidelity and financial deception, and that I had already retained a lawyer, a former colleague from my paralegal years, as it happened, who specialized in precisely this category of case, because I had spent 6 years training other women for exactly this moment, and I intended, for the first time, to use every bit of that knowledge for myself. The financial reckoning took another 4 months to fully resolve. Because our marriage had never legally shared ownership of the house, and because I could prove, through Carol's documentation and 3 years of bank statements, that marital funds from our joint accounts had been repeatedly diverted to support Danielle's household without my knowledge or consent, my lawyer argued successfully that Marcus owed restitution for those diverted funds as part of the divorce settlement. He did not fight the settlement in the end. Not really. I think some part of him understood, sitting across from his own attorney during mediation, that he had already lost the version of himself that got to be the sympathetic party in this story, and no amount of legal maneuvering was going to restore that. I don't know, to this day, what happened with Danielle and her 2 sons after everything came out. I made a deliberate choice not to find out, not out of coldness, but because I understood somewhere in the process that continuing to track her life would only keep me tethered to a story I needed to finish closing. I heard, secondhand through a mutual acquaintance I never asked follow-up questions of, that she hadn't known about me either, that she, too, had believed herself to be his only family. If that's true, and I have no reason to doubt it, then in some strange, quiet way, we were both women who trusted the exact same lie, simply from 2 different houses, on 2 different streets, living out 2 different versions of a life he had constructed entirely for his own convenience. What I do know, with complete certainty, is this. On what would have been our 4th wedding anniversary, I sat alone in the house that had always, legally, and now finally, truly, belonged only to me. I lit a candle. I poured a glass of the same wine I never got to give him on that drive 4 hours north, the bottle I'd wrapped so carefully in a towel so it wouldn't break. I drank it slowly, by myself, at that same kitchen table, not in mourning, but in something closer to relief than I expected to feel. I had spent 3 years believing I was building a life with someone who saw me as permanent as chosen, as the only version of a future he wanted. What I learned, in the end, sitting outside a stranger's house, watching a man I thought I knew lift a soccer bag into a car I'd never seen, is that I had been building a life that was entirely my own the whole time. I simply hadn't understood until that day exactly how much of it I was already capable of holding together without him. Some people, when they discover a betrayal like this, respond by burning everything down loudly, publicly, immediately. I understand that instinct completely, and I don't judge anyone who feels it. But I have never believed that the loudest response is automatically the strongest one. I didn't need to humiliate Marcus in front of his coworkers or post his double life across every social platform I had access to make sure he understood the full weight of what he'd lost. I only needed to sit quietly at a kitchen table on an ordinary Tuesday evening, place a folder in front of him, and let him watch. In real time, 3 years of carefully maintained lies collapse under the weight of 6 years of quiet, patient, professional training. He never once thought to ask me about back when he still had the chance. If you have ever been the one who found out too late, the one who sat frozen behind a steering wheel doing arithmetic you never wanted to do, watching a stranger's ordinary Friday morning unfold in front of you, like a door swinging open onto a life you didn't know existed. I want you to understand something clearly. Calm is not weakness. It never was. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is not the one who has given up, or the one who doesn't feel the full weight of what's happening to her. Sometimes she is simply the one who is already 3 steps ahead, already building the folder, already preparing the exact, patient reckoning that will end everything. One deliberate piece of evidence at a time. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever discovered something about someone you trusted that changed everything you thought you knew? Subscribe to Quiet Reckoning for a new story every week.